He's one of the ones stuck in traffic. Mihir Bilar,
Here.
Robert Brown. Lee Duran. Tara Gentry-Kelso.
Present.
And I think you have to give a statement, right?
I sure do. Let me grab it really quickly. Okay, here I go. I am attending the Privacy Advisory Board of the City of San Diego meeting today remotely due to my illness emergency circumstances, and I don't want to miss the meeting, but I do want to be present while I'm having the illness. And it prevents me from attending in person. I don't want to get anybody sick. The Privacy Advisory Board, City of San Diego, approved this request today. Pursuant to the Brown Act, I am disclosing that there are no individuals 18 of age or older present. Excuse me. No individuals 18 of age or older present in the room with me. If someone else is present, I would add that name, but no one's here. I will update this disclosure if it changes during the course of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
Sid
you.
Martinez. He's also stuck in traffic. Pagal Parsi, that's me, I'm here. And Khalid Alexander.
Here.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. We will go on to approval of the October 5th minutes that have been posted online. We have a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Moving on to item number 3, non-agenda public comment. Okay. We have one public comment on meeting minutes.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. To speak to the approval of meeting minutes, the first 5 minutes was cut out of the October 5th special PAB public meeting video placed on YouTube. It is a separate matter all through September and over the past 3 weeks, myself writing letters to the PAB and city staff liaison. I was never written back to about PAB procedural questions and issues. On my own initiative, I was able to contact someone within City TV. We worked out a good system that I can connect with them in the future for council committee public meeting videos. So thank you that a good community practices is working itself out. To follow this up, is there some Brown Act reason and why the PAB and San Diego city government cannot write back to myself when I write simple letters of officious procedural questions? Can we have some open or offline discussions so it can be a more safe and trusting process for ourselves? I hope these words can be relevant to the public comment practices of the approval of this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more?
Not for the agenda, but there's one now for non-agenda.
And there are no comments on Zoom. Okay, moving on to item 3, non-agenda public comments. We have how many in person? We've got one in person. Blair Beekman. Got 2 minutes.
I'll actually probably only need a minute. I practiced my words for a minute today. I'm not speaking to the San Diego Ubiqua contract at this time, but to a current broader pattern within at least the state of California, if not other states. We should be very much questioning why there is a push for a larger increase in new ALPR surveillance tech across California cities at this time, as it simply should be fair to assume that surveillance tech and ALPR use within the current smart streetlight programs of California cities, including San Diego, seems to be doing its job well and is helping to address and reduce violent crime in California cities over the past few years. Updating tech and some current ongoing questions of crime and public safety is important, but we need to find a better balance to more openly discuss community surveillance tech, accountability, responsibility, public safety, civil protections, and community participation as one community subject and purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's it for me on Zoom.
I don't see any on Zoom. That closes item number 3. Moving on to item number 4, discussion updates on the list of existing surveillance technologies. Lee, are you prepared to talk on that, or would you like to wait for Ike? We should wait for Ike. Well, unfortunately, all of these will have to wait for Ike and Sid. So Ike says that he has an ETA of 5:45 and Sid has an ETA of 5:55. Should we? Sure. Let's do public comments on item number 4. Updates on the list of existing surveillance technologies. In chambers, we have
There's 2, Seth Hall and Blair.
minutes apiece. Seth? Oh, Blair.
Hi, this letter I just was recently writing, hopefully I can get this down, it may be a little sketchy. I hope the mayor and police chiefs press conference a few weeks ago around amendment issues. I hope that we've learned important lessons that if we offer them good ideas of openness and accountability to prioritize the items needed. Oh, and that we prioritize the items needed for surveillance tech review by the mayor and police chief, and to consider their amendment ideas. I think this is an important combination in developing good compromise for all sides. By thinking of openness and accountability and thinking of amendment ideas and prioritizing, specific needs of the mayor's office and police chief's office at this time, I think we can work towards a middle ground. And I think that's important. I hope we trust the ideas of ideals and that we want to work towards our good and our best ideals towards the future of responsible tech practices. And I think that will bring out some interesting things for ourselves. And I hope we can work on those efforts. And it's from that, a real important idea I've been trying to stress in the past few weeks is for legitimacy, to talk about legitimacy of the PAB board. I think that is around ideas if we practice openness and accountability, we develop a safe and trusting place, and we can develop a really good way to be working and managing, and people can come to this place as kind of a refuge. And I want to really hope we can work towards those good things. And what we couldn't do a few months ago, what was uncomfortable and new to us in this process, I hope we can learn to better do. And that's important to me, and to more openly do. And thanks for your time. Good luck in our efforts to address this item.
I'd like to recognize that Dr. Robert Brown has joined us via Zoom. Can we unmute him so he can read the statement, please? Dr. Brown, please read the Brown Act required statement. Dr. Brown, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
We can
Can
hear
you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Ike was supposed to be sending me that to read before the meeting. I apologize for getting on late. I was having problems. I went to the very last October 26th date to get on, and that didn't work for me. But no, I don't have the statement. He said he was going to send it to me to read. At least I haven't been able to find it.
Okay, we will send it to you. It's a requirement for you to state them, and you do have to be on camera in order to
Okay, I'm trying to get on
count
there.
it
right
as part of the meeting. Otherwise, you're welcome to just participate as an audience.
I'm trying to get on. The camera thing won't let me get. Hold on a second.
We will
just-
we'll recognize you
just-
once that's fixed.
Okay.
Let's go
I
ahead
did-
and continue on with the public comments.
I did send him the statement just now too.
Thank you.
Okay. Why is my camera not working? Hold on a second. Oh, participants. I got that on. What is going on? Okay, let me read the statement that she just sent me. Oh God. Let me read it. Go to Tara, yes. It says here, I am attending the Privacy Advisory Board Commission meeting today remotely due to emergency circumstances. Related to my medical condition. I had surgery. I'm having some more medical work done tomorrow morning. That prevents me from attending in person. The Privacy Advisory Board approved this request today, November 1st, pursuant to the Brown Act. I'm disclosing that there are no other individuals 18 years of age or older present in the room with me. If there is someone else present, then I don't have anyone. I will update this disclosure if it changes during the course of the meeting. Thank you. Now I got to find a way to get on my camera if I can. It let me unmute, but it
Great, thank you.
handle remotely the camera thing too. Hold on a second.
We'll also recognize that Ike Anyanetu, our chair, has joined us. I'll hand it over to him. We're in the middle of public comment.
Next speaker is
Good evening. On the topic of the surveillance inventory, I wanted to make a comment tonight urging the board to be bold, not be timid. I understand that there's a lot of pressure on this situation, and there is limited work hours for our volunteers on this board. And it would be easy to think that you need to trickle in the technologies one at a time to make sure that the workload is sustained at a low level. That only makes sense if you look at the technology list and you see Battle Royale on every single line. That's not the case, right? This inventory, flawed as it is as it sits, contains a great deal of very simple technologies, right? A lot of duplicates, a lot of things that can be covered under one policy. There's a lot of political pressure out there, some of it being spoken on camera in front of the media, indicating that the city has doubt as to whether this board can efficiently process the technology that has been inventoried. And the reality there is that if we slow walk the technology one at a time, I think those criticisms would be borne out. The right way, in my opinion, would be for this board to mix a number of technologies that might be more complicated or more controversial, and mix those in with a great number of technologies which will not be complicated and will be simple. And to start to process those together efficiently so that we can all demonstrate that we're on the same page and moving the best we can. Thanks.
Any comments online?
Yeah, I would like to just say that first of all, I want to thank all of those who are on the meeting. And again, I want to apologize for being late, and I want to thank Chloe and Chida for their leadership, and Ike. And from where I sit, I just want to say that what the previous speaker said is, I've been getting it from my community members that it seems as though we are intentionally trying to delay a service that's very important. And people are paying very close attention to how we behave on this board, the things that we say about some of our elected officials. And they are really, really concerned. And I assured them I would try to do my best, and that I have not, those are not I am here to act on behalf of the citizens, all the citizens of San Diego, and I know safety is a first priority. With that being said, we as a board, we have to find a way to make sure that we come together and do the work that's expected of us for the greater San Diego. We have to, we promised we would do that, and I'm looking forward to working with you all to get that done. And again, we have people watching us. This is extremely important to them, whether or not law enforcement is able to carry out their duty to protect them. And, I have been a victim of a crime, so I know what it's like to be, and a lot of other people are fearful of it, especially the way things are happening now in the world and in our country, and has been happening for a long time. So with that being said, I'll just appreciate all of you, and I'm going to give the mic back to the floor.
The words, as always, Dr. Brown. One thing I didn't get in front of people before is the presentation we have for item 4. Oh, I think we have a hand up for first on item 4. Laura?
I can wait until after the presentation. That's fine, thank you.
We're just bringing it up with those here and viewing remotely. All right, so ahead of that, we have the spreadsheet, but we'd also like the PDF that says PAB surveillance tech list updates, just a couple slides overviewing the rationale. You'll see this data for last week. Thank you all for bearing with us, and I personally apologize anybody who was affected by the change in the scheduling. Just we're doing our best to make sure that it's a seamless experience going forward. And second, the comments of my colleagues. Got to make sure we do this right. We're listening. We're doing this, making sure everything comes from a policy perspective. No grandstanding. It's about the policy. So thank you for those comments. Let's stay focused here. The purpose and criteria for this initial ranking, and this is something that if you look at this is the wording from the ordinance itself, specifying that, well, let's go ahead and read it, that we shall rank items in order of potential impact to civil liberties. Yeah, I understand, the board understands there's a ton of criteria that the city that each department will take into this, into where they believe what should get addressed in which order. It's our duty, we're appointed here to do this job of ranking items specifically in order of potential impact to civil liberties. So I just want to make sure that the conversations stay focused to that point. We should also take into consideration input from city staff on operational importance of the surveillance technology and determining the ranking to allow matters to be heard in a timely manner. So when it comes to matters being heard in a timely manner, I think the board is kind of unanimous in that regard that we would like to move forward if there's any technology that the city believes needs to be addressed. So the operational importance is something that the board recognizes and is absolutely willing to work forward with the city on that. So next slide. I identified 338 specific different surveillance technologies that were listed. Just broadly, the idea, you'll see a couple different technologies highlighted, and you'll see some departments where there's nothing highlighted. The idea is to target no more than 10% from each department for initial review. So we really don't want to overload anybody having to make any decisions with what the PAB finds to be of high priority to civil liberties. Just a recommendation. And of course, that third bullet point, all of these points are subject to input from city staff on operational importance and public safety. All right, moving ahead. On the big items, I think came up before and members have brought forward. Now there's so much that we can do. We just here do what we can. Let's hope that we can move forward with at least some initial prioritization. We certainly take into account things like not just the technology itself, but the impact on population. There is still a challenge to rank these in a vacuum, doing so without context, urgency, and toppability. We believe once we have that, we'll be able to have a more precise prioritization. Just some notes on that. There were technologies that were identified as not under the ordinance and they can be removed. That's something that we can move forward if maybe there's something that, again, initial prioritization, if there is a reason to keep those in the list, then that's something that I think as a general point, we're open to. And also noted technologies, just want to make sure that all the technologies are being included. And if there are technologies that aren't included or are not specified correctly, and this is something that might just be mislabeled. So nothing, I don't think anything that would be require a lengthy debate as to, okay, well, this is something that would be helpful for us to really specify where it lies in our priority.
For the non-technology specialist in the room, what does gray shaft, gray key mean? This example you missing?
I know very little of the technology. If there's staff here from PD or the city that is familiar or from the board, I mean, I can look it up, but I think this is something that I just noted that it was on the original list that we got from the PD a while back, but it was no longer on the full city list. Maybe something got lost in translation. Certainly willing to get more context, please.
Can you hear me? I want to make sure it's on. I'm Jeff Jordan. I'm a captain with the San Diego Police Department, and I believe the list that was initially provided was a draft list. And the list itself is dynamic. It's undergone multiple reviews from different parties to see what actually should comply and what doesn't comply with the ordinance, and in trying to interpret the ordinance. I think you referenced gray key, and then obviously, there's certain exemptions under the ordinance if that technology is used by a federal task force and not used by different officers. So, we try to look at the technologies that follow the letter of the law under the ordinance and whether they're being used by officers within the San Diego Police Department and not outside of it, potentially with use in task forces. So you will see a number of technologies that are in draft form that were provided on this list that have not been finalized. In addition to that, most recently, we had a legal opinion from the city attorney's office identifying that although they were a federal task force, ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, because they use city processes to acquire equipment, they would fall under the provisions of the ordinance. That's just one example. So in that draft list, there may be an additional 8 technologies, just for example, within the police department that have not been identified yet, because we're still going through trying to respond to that most recent city attorney's opinion.
Thank you. I'll maybe give the board a chance to ask further, anything further, but I think that's a good amount of context. I think the point of missing technologies was more if there's anything missing that the board noticed that they saw in previous documents or members of the public may have noticed, and just understanding that delta and the context behind that. So thank you, Captain Jordan. Just one more slide here as an excerpt of selected prioritized technology. Some items from the PD as well as one from fire rescue. You can see the defined purpose, but for these technologies, including this helicopter video downlink system, CellHawk, 3500 genetic analyzer, all have specific uses. These are not interrelated technologies. These are individual. They have individual purposes, their own uses. As far as I know, the PD items have more context available on their website. All of their surveillance tech that Captain Jordan mentioned is available to be viewed. We'll have the draft use policies. So for technology that, for example, detects results from human identity testing processes, genetic analysis, take into account the technology itself, how it can be used, the scope, how broadly can this be used in a one-off scenario, or can this be used in a broad manner? Things that were kept in mind, but not the only things identified. And of course, all open to feedback. And this will also be a bit of a dynamic document. All right, I'm done talking. It's time to open it up to the board if there's further comments or questions.
I think Tara was first.
Tara? Also get better soon, please.
Thank you, Ike. So what I absolutely respect the statement in the presentation, because we got this list around, I believe, in September, and I've been going through it and looking at some things. And what I appreciate is that some of the things that I brought up in our September meeting is some things, and I'm hoping that this was just sort of like a draft preliminary list. But as a software and IT and technology professional, I did notice some things that were not included, and maybe they hadn't made the cut based on some of the requirements listed in the ordinance. However, I respect that this board, we are actually going to make an effort to review and prioritize some of these things. And I'm just excited to look at more of them, but I've sort of been looking at the list since around September, just to see, what are some of the things that are going to be prioritized. And remember, I think at that time I was interested in one of the applications or the software listed that the Human Resources Department was using, and also one of the resources that Parks and Rec and Streets, and one of the main applications that they were using. And I think I made a note of it in September that it is on a platform that I'm certified as a developer and a system administrator in. And so for me, for it to not be listed, really, raise some red flags for us. So I'm very interested in diving into this to find out, sort of where the prioritization is going to be. And I'm hoping that as we move forward and go through this list as a board, we'll be able to sort of learn off of each other and sort of understand some of the parameters that are required with respect to privacy and our citizens, and what our city does need as a priority. So I just appreciate and respect what you just put together to present about us actually evaluating all of these things for technology, and prioritization. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I had one question on this list, and it's really having to do with the timing, et cetera. So I wonder on these items, how many are already in use? And just waiting for final sign off from us as compared to waiting for final approval from the city in order to start use. I imagine a lot of these may already be in use and they require our approval.
I think that was initially part of the rationale is to, along with the technology, also just ask how many of these are in use and then to what extent. I think the draft that we see online, I don't know if it has that, but I think the working copy has that question of, please list technologies that are in use. So that's a really good point. If there's a certain way that you think this should be handled or communicated, all ears.
So question for the ad hoc committee that reviewed these. So the three that you all have prioritized, do you envision those being reviewed in what kind of time frame?
These are not actually all of the ones that are prioritized. So these are selected couple of them. I think if you look online, there's maybe 9 or 10 that are selected. Maybe less than that, maybe 8 at most. So in terms of timeline, I think that's something that, as mentioned earlier, there's we certainly would hope, okay, here's something that we're going to give you something. Now we can get more information, more context, operational importance, what it's going to look like for getting contracts sorted out. We have information that it doesn't, we know that this technology, we can't get this contracts ready in front of us for months. I think that we can work with that, really depending on how technology is used. Say one technology is in use, one technology is not in use. One technology has an expiring contract, one technology doesn't. Maybe these should be laid out more clearly, but this is something that would be kind of critical to the decision-making process and priority.
So is the next step to engage with those relevant city departments to figure out how they feel about the prioritization? Is that what's?
That's right. Barring, of course, anything the board feels would be crucial to include before that happens. See, Tora?
Hi, thank you. Are you talking about the list of the three that you just showed? Is that what you're referring to? Because I'm looking at that full list that we were given. The full one where it's yellow, green, and orange back in September, where it has every single city department and everything they're using. So are you guys referring to just the three that you brought up? Because the one I'm looking at is like a lot. Hold on.
Yeah, Tora, I want to see if we can address that. We do have that document of our
Okay.
current draft of priority. So that takes what you mentioned, that list from September, and on top of that, it highlights in red what we identified as higher priority. What you saw in the slides are just 3 of those, but I
Big
think
ones.
the full list is, I think it's less than 10. But if maybe it'd be useful to bring it up so that we can at least identify what those ones are.
It's only a
Yeah.
couple additional, so maybe 6.
6 more, okay. 6
Okay.
total. 6 total, okay.
And can you real quick, share with us of the ones you have listed, you think estimating of 6, what are the departments that are I saw fire on one of them.
Yeah,
I
first
saw-
pass, the only ones that seem to have, really strong privacy, civil liberties impact, of course, will naturally fall under the PD, fire rescue. As an engineer myself, I'm aware that technology itself really depends on how it's used. Surveillance tech, drone technology that can be used to find someone who's stranded, but it could also be used in other cases. So if we're talking purely what our purpose and criteria was set out for. I think it was mostly PD and fire rescue.
Okay, yeah, only because you're talking about for your criteria to prioritize, because a lot of these live on an application that very recently had security events. So that's why I'm asking. There's a couple of them here.
I mean, that's the purpose of this conversation. Is it
Okay.
possible to get the list brought up, the spreadsheet that we have? I mean, I think that's part of this conversation is to identify
share.
what we would like that's not up there and what's not.
Can you see my share? So everyone can see the colors, right?
The one that Chloe has is the updated one
Okay.
that the committee sent out, I believe. Yeah, that one. So go ahead and share this one, Chloe.
Thank you.
And you're right. Our initial identified prioritization is only fire rescue and San Diego Police.
Well, this document, originally, all the departments were in one list. So we pulled out each department into their own tabs. At the bottom, you can see them split. Some of the ones that only had one or two technologies are kind of combined. Down on the right, you can see, for example, homeless, library, for example, are combined into similar departments. Just no rhyme or reason other than that's the order that we got them in. And so they ended up getting grouped together. So I want to make sure that's clear. Same with the other groups such as Treasury, Comms, Admin, Dep. So this is the list I was referring to. The original list sent out from the city did not have that red. So as you flip through, you can see whatever is highlighted in red and mostly PD and fire. If we move over to the fire tab at the bottom, Chloe, I think we'll see something that's maybe one other fire item. Yeah, down we have that. If you scroll down, you'll see that we have the one technology there. Yeah, bomb squad, UAV program, helicopter video downlink system. Those might be the only two for fire rescue. And maybe this is something that you can go back and say, hey, PAB, take this into account. This is something that may have been overlooked. We find this has priority over that for other reasons. Maybe there's other similarities not taken into account based on context, maybe based on uses that may be classified. So that's something, all of this is to be known as a dynamic document. And then if we scroll over to the last bottom on the PD tab on the very right, I think it's SDPD, we'll see just a few more items that are highlighted in red. There's the genetic analyzer, and if you scroll down, we'll just see a couple more, maybe 4 more. So not meant to be completely exhaustive. It's meant to be capped at 10% of a department's items, really just to bring up an initial dialogue conversation. Hopefully we can start with this and go from there.
I see 10 total in STPD.
Is there 10 then? 10 that are highlighted?
Yeah.
Okay, then I misspoke earlier at 8. So
Some of those are combined. They're in the same Cellbrite, et cetera.
for the purpose of this conversation, let's call them all separate. So let's say 10, and that's something that surely maybe we can talk about more this list in general. If we feel that there are items that maybe 338 isn't the true number, maybe we find that iterating a few times, talk with the department a few times, talk with each department, maybe this gets narrowed down to 200. Maybe with surveillance tech ordinance amendments, we can find that with exemptions, there's even more narrowed down. But at least want to make sure we know what we're talking about. We have a solid number and we can identify these are the eyebrow raising ones. Anything else, Mayor? Also for the city, if there's a better way to get this information, like other than asking you to go through this, please let me know too. I don't necessarily think it's fair to figure this out.
Is I called on, I talk, is what is part of what went behind choosing these technologies. I don't know whether they had the conversations with you individually or if it was only in a press conference. The press conference where they spoke about certain technologies that were preventing that had some type of priority. This was the chiefs and the mayor. Is that did some of these technologies come from those concerns in order to address some of those concerns?
The recent press conferences and addresses from the city, I think the mayor and PD spoke to that about technologies that are preventing them from getting the job they need to do to be done. Specifically, if those impacted what made the list initially, this is purely the civil liberties impact. The operational importance impact, I think that's something that we is also taken into account for, well, if we find that there's ones that specifically should get attention.
But the city hasn't asked us to look at specific technologies in order to speed up the process.
Right. I think if the city reached out, said, please, these are the ones that should get the highest priority, and I don't foresee a problem with that of us coming to a consensus there. Oh, I see Torres hand. I think I noted that, but forgot that.
Thank you. So I mean, I just recommend, because we're all going to review this too, right? Not just the prioritization committee. I feel like the whole board should be reviewing this list. And the way I started reviewing it is I put filters on the department. Only, and I, because I didn't want to run like a query on the colors or anything like that. But when I filtered by department, it was just really interesting to me, as someone who comes from a full-on enterprise business where you have an enterprise license for as many instances as you want. There were so many different departments that had their own Zoom renewals. So I just for me, I had a question about are we paying a blanket Zoom contract? And the reason why I'm asking about Zoom is because you may know that Zoom has had several, since COVID, several privacy risks or privacy vulnerabilities. And so for me to not have Zoom on there, maybe Zoom's not being renewed right now, or maybe Zoom's not being considered, but what is going to prevent us from, maybe I would like for us as a technology and privacy committee to also consider the contracting for Zoom. Are we paying, $10,000 for each of these Zoom instances when we could be paying a blanket amount? And I feel like there were so many on there that listed Zoom. That's one of the biggest examples. I'm like, okay, I've seen so many. So I'm hoping that we can consider a lot of these things, but my recommendation is that when you do go through this big gigantic list, when we get the updated one, is to filter by department so that you can sort of get a better sense of the technology that multiple departments are asking for the same application, or asking for, or displaying, that they use the same application. So thank you.
I think we can move on then to item one more.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there a way that we can get feedback from the community, that we can get feedback from the city, and where we can look at some of the technologies and say that we don't foresee there being some large in-depth conversation like the first technology that was chosen, and just kind of by consent, go ahead and move past those? And also look at some technologies that we think are important and are going to take more time and deserve a meaningful kind of dive. for example, I don't think we have to, and I do see that you color coordinated, for example, binoculars. Like, I don't think we need to have a long in-depth conversation around binoculars. But I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can be like, hey, look, all of these technologies, we're okay with kind of a quick pass. And these are the technologies that I think, for all of the reasons that have been brought up, we can begin to tackle now.
Just want to point out that we only separated them into departments and highlighted in red. The city is the one that originally did the green, yellow, orange color coding. So I think that's something that would be received pretty well. Right? There's this indication, these are the ones that we've highlighted are different, but I think, hold on, right? Just because it's surveillance technology, not surveillance technology as one would consider another technology, right? What's the correct way of course of action? I think that's something that.
Yeah, because I think there's a narrative out there that we're going to be spending, months and months on every technology, and I don't think that that's necessarily necessary. And so if there is a way for us to kind of go through it and say, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and push these forward. These are the ones that we really want to spend a lot of time. I don't know what the technical process in doing that so that we're in line with the ordinance, but I'd be interested in figuring out. I think one of the public comments was to that point that, hey, look, let's go into this and let's say, hey, let's deal with it so that it doesn't continue to drag on.
You're actually alluding to item 6. There's quite a bit that I think that we could do to make the ordinance. Then the ordinance, I'm sure that there are things that we could come together and agree upon would be helpful. We're talking about reducing administrative burden. We're talking about being able to do our jobs. So, yeah. One more hand, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to re-emphasize that I'm good with whatever process you come up with. I just do not, these tools are being used for safety purposes. We need to be very careful in terms of, I just don't want to delay the work that's being done. I don't want to be perceived as being in the way of them getting something done. So I don't know if how we go about doing it. I don't know if we need to meet separately to talk about it as a group or what have you at a later time. Or I know there are Brown Act considerations, but I just want to make sure that whatever we do not delay these agencies from getting their job, getting their work done. I just want to make sure we prioritize that. If they've been using them and we haven't had any complaints, or they haven't had any complaints about someone using them in an awkward way or what have you, then I think we should just, I'm just looking for a way to do this without causing interruption to services. That's basically what I'm looking for. And I just want to make sure that we as a board or commission are not the ones causing them not to be able to do their job of protecting the city. So again, I want you to bear with me, but this is critical to me, and I think it should be to the board as well.
I think we're all on the same page there. Certainly would like to have more than 2 technologies passed currently. So let's move on to item 5. Is it? You should probably move on to item 5. Go ahead, the committee, or I'll usually present first, then public comment.
Okay, item 5, we're going to talk about the feedback that we have for the Public Safety Committee and City Council about the Ubiquia and Flock contracts. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to have to take some medications in just 1 minute as I present. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second. Okay, sorry. So the Ubiquia and Flock contracts went in front of the City Council's Public Safety Committee. They moved the contract along without action to the City Council. However, they did request for the PAB to review the contract and provide any feedback that we have before the contract goes to the full City Council. A group of us met to discuss the contract. We reviewed it. That was myself as the chair, Tara, Ike, and Sid. We reviewed the agreement, and here were some of the concerns that we had. The first concern that we had was, say again? I'm sorry, it was Khalid, not Ike, I'm sorry. The first concern that we had was regarding the vendor's use of our data and the licensing provisions. Both Ubiquia and Flock reserve the right to use the city's information for their own purposes and to train their own algorithms and improve and enhance their services. I'm going to stop for just a second to recognize that Sid Martinez has joined us. So now we have a full board that is available, that is here today. So concerns around the vendor's use of our data for their own purposes, that was not specifically prohibited in the contract. In fact, it was allowable in the contract. Item B was the fact that if at any point the contract is canceled or terminated, both Flock and Ubiquia would continue to have access to our data. However, we, San Diegans, would not. So you'll notice that the contract says all services and access to data from the public safety solution shall terminate and will no longer be accessible to the city. We found that this didn't make sense because we are the owner of the data. And so we should have access to the data at the very least, even if the contract is terminated. Certainly that's very important in case we move to a different solution. That's the portability need that we've mentioned here. Next, there was a concern about who owns the actual hardware. The cameras, the contract states that the cameras will remain Ubiquia's property. However, we would recommend as a standard practice for the city to own all hardware. That would allow us, if we would like anyway, to maintain control and surplus the devices as they become more obsolete. There were some mentions about security standards in the contract. However, the standards were not specified. So we would ask that the city actually include those standards that we are holding our vendors to. Item E, we would like the contract to specifically state that we need to review and approve all subcontractors. This is very, very important because some subcontractors may share information outside of what the contract allows and what the surveillance use policy allows. Item F, optional features. The contract, we believe, should explicitly prohibit uses of the optional features such as gunshot detection and facial recognition. Item G, we recommend that the contract explicitly prohibit sharing for immigration purposes, prosecutions related to reproductive care, and prosecutions related to gender affirming care. There is an amendment, a requested amendment as part of this. I'll talk about that in just a second. And we had some additional considerations related to data encryption, and that the contract should require that there be encryption of the physical components, not just the data. We found that the indemnification, limitations of liability, and warranty terms were not at all sufficient to protect the city and San Diegans. We would like to see specific cyber insurance provisions in the contract. And it was also unclear to us whether Ubiquia would be removing all of the previously installed cameras or merely the 500 that they're replacing. So those were the concerns that the group identified. There is one amendment on the floor that we will, I suppose, vote on after we get public comment, and that is to section G. Section G was sharing for specific purposes, as you'll recall from just a minute ago. We requested that the contract explicitly prohibit sharing for immigration, reproductive care, and gender affirming care. The amendment would ask that we add any use of the information to prosecute based on race, ethnicity, or national origin, anything that would fall under AB 2542. So with that, we'll stop and let's hear from the public.
I think we just have Blair Beekman, unless there's another slip that I didn't see in person.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. To offer my ideas of continuity, thanks for your patience. The past few weeks, I've been talking about these things. California has been much reducing violent crime across the state, including in San Diego at this time. To more openly describe current San Diego smart streetlight surveillance tech that is already in place, helps makes asks for future minimum tech purchases easier. I'm hoping this November can be a time we can more easily transition into understanding that the everyday public can have a more open public review time of the full Ubiqua contract, and that the PAB itself can work to be more clear in how their initial October 26 recommendations and questions of the 85-page summary can begin to more openly and directly work with the full Ubiqua contract itself and with everyday community. From all of this, there may not be public safety pressure for a mid-November final approval of this item. A timetable of mid-December 2023 simply may be a more realistic time for a final approval vote of the Ubiqua contract and for a more open public process. The idea of mid-February as a kind of a backup, if into mid-February 2024 can possibly also be of help if we are clear with each other about that now in expectations. And just to make that noted at this time, hopefully can help in the final approval process. I'm talking more on ideas of continuity. I'm really counting on you guys in working on within the contract itself and to bring out from the full contract what exactly it's saying. It can say things very clearly. It should be able to, and to make that available to ourselves as everyday public. Good luck in those efforts to be able to do that. Thank you.
We have one more speaker, Lily Irani. Also want to mention, as Tora pointed out in the chat, we have one more scheduled PAB meeting for the year. So we're adjourned for December.
Okay, hello board. Thank you for all your hard work. And thank you for the analysis of the contract that the PAB provided. You found a lot of stuff that the Trust Coalition also found as concerning. I'm speaking from the Trust Coalition, and there's just two things that we found reading the contract and the FLOC EULA that were not part of your report. And we sent a memo to the PAB this morning. So I just wanted to highlight the things that, the extra things. The first thing that we noticed in the contract was that, you know, the way that the Ubiqua contract claims for Ubiqua a kind of perpetual right to use the data that the city owns. There's a phrase that Ubiqua retains this right even, quote, after the term of the contract is over. So it almost seems like when if the city decides they don't like what Ubiqua or FLOC are doing when they terminate the contract, that those companies still retain the right to do anything with our data. So that was one thing that if I missed it there, I apologize, but I didn't see it there. And then the second thing that we found also was the way that the city agreement in section 6.2 sort of stacks the kind of the order of which policies or contract terms supersede what. There's kind of an order in which these terms should be applied. And so the city agreement 6.2 specifies that the contract and Flock's EULA supersede the provisions of the quote applicable use policy. So council's approved use policies prevent a range of data sharing in an attempt to protect immigrants, reproductive care seekers, and other vulnerable communities. But it seems like the use policy is actually the lowest priority compared to the contract when there's a contradiction between the two. I'm not a lawyer, but so I just wanted to flag that because there's lawyers on this board. So thank you very much.
That's all for in-person.
Nancy Relaford.
Hi, thank you. How long do I have?
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank the board members for your service, and I agree with the board's proposed amendments and changes for the contract. I do have concerns still regarding Flock specifically. Most cities that I know of using Flock contracts directly with that company. I'm concerned by Flock's business practices, including marketing ALPRs to private entities and individuals such as HOAs and homeowners, nationally networking ALPR data and information as a selling point for its products and services, and taking a sort of neutral stance on various state laws. And I would argue for more accountability and control over the city's relationship directly with Flock than this contract seems to give. Under this agreement, there's no direct contract between San Diego and Flock, no real accountability that I can see. We have only the end user license agreement with Flock. And as an end user for various applications myself, my impression is that tech companies regularly update their EULAs, and the end user has the choice to either accept the new terms or stop using the product. So I'd like to know what are San Diego's options under this agreement if and when Flock changes the terms of their end user license agreement. And then specifically, I'm also very concerned by Flock's marketing to subscribers outside of law enforcement or other governmental agencies that are bound by various laws, policies, standards, and requirements for ethical use, privacy, and so forth. And they're encouraging data sharing at all levels. They've been called the ring doorbell of ALPR. My concern.
Your time.
Okay, thank you. My concern is that we should not enter into agreements for direct sharing of community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Samara Yusufi. Samara Yusufi.
Oh, did it not work? Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to thank you all for the conversation tonight and, really working to identify some of the issues within this contract. As the deputy director at PANA and representing so many community members who right now are seeing a significant increase in Islamophobia for perceived, religious bias, and who are being targeted and surveilled within our communities. I just really want to emphasize that it is so essential for you all to be doing what you're doing right now, which is really reviewing and ensuring that there are protections in place in contracts such as this one. We are definitely concerned about $12 million, being spent to then give this Florida technology company so much access to San Diegans and to their day-to-day patterns. And so I appreciate the elements that you all added tonight for ensuring that this isn't shared with immigration enforcement, that there isn't racial bias included, and that amendment is put into place. And I really hope that council adheres to that and understands how these types of things need to be explicitly written written in these contracts in order to protect communities like ours. I mean, I think essentially the best way to protect our communities is to not deploy these, technologies in the first place. Because after that, there's very little control over what we can do. But, second best is ensuring that at least we have that really strong language. So I wanted to thank you all.
That's all for online comment. Whoever's ready to go.
Thank you. I would like to sort of just say that I really do. I agree with what Homaira is saying. And so what I wanted to say is yes. And when Trust brought this to us, the memo that talks about, EULAs and, perpetual, just constant, what do they call it? Perpetuate access or right to, to sort of, boost their inventory or to boost their AI or whatever they're trying to use the data for, and the city not being able to have access to it. So, they're building and using data. But when I was reading their memo, the Trust San Diego Coalition today, it made me think of a current example that we just had in society where in San Diego, where the people who are running an animal shelter, they had so many, hamsters and gerbils and those types of animals that they contracted with another humane society to give those animals to a different, that, they said, hey, take them, but they didn't have anything in place to do the checks and balances to find out where those animals went. And come to find out, those animals went to a snake and reptile farm, probably for food. But the fact that there were no controls in place, or no one even decided to flag, and second, just sort of get a check and balance in place to verify that the animals that were supposed to be adopted out were going to go somewhere, that was going to be adopted out. That reminded me of what this memo talked about, perpetuate use of the data, constant access to it. If anything, the city should, I know they're moving forward, but if anything, the city probably should have asked for equal share and access to the data. Only because that's your backup, right? That's your check and balance. The customer gets to keep some. So yeah, that just bothered me. I'm not sure who's doing this editing, but thank you. I'm looking at it. It looks good. So that just bothered me. The other thing I want to say is, Homaira, I appreciate what you said. We are really looking at some of the things that, could need to be prevented with respect to privacy and not treating people a different type of way, but that this technology is equal in, we're evaluating it, trying to see what does it do? How is it beneficial? And so I appreciate your comments, because it does take a lot to just analyze and look at this stuff. But I just hope, I'm just going to say this, that we are analyzing every piece of technology that comes forward to this board, because I'm telling you, I was looking at that list and there's some stuff on there that people who aren't technologically people, or who don't care about security and privacy, that they just didn't think would be, susceptible to privacy or any type of surveillance. And they are. And so I just want to make sure that we are looking at every department, not just scrutinizing fire or the police or anything like that. Every department that presents a piece of technology to be reviewed for surveillance, we need to look at all of these technologies equally, because you would think that a fingerprint machine isn't going to harm anybody like a camera. Guess what? That's data collection, that's precise for a person. So I think we need to just make sure we keep our eyes and ears open to not just cameras, but there's other technology that's gathering data that, has a human touch or human facet to it. So I just want to make sure that we are being fair across the board with every department that brings something and not scrutinizing just a couple. Thank you.
I think we'll start to see if there's any other comments. I don't want to ask Captain Jordan to come up and then go back down if there's other questions. If there's any questions that require a response from the PD, maybe we'll ask for those first.
No questions or response from the PD directly, but I think the subcommittee and Trust SD, et cetera, have identified some really good points. And instead of just adding to a number of points, I think these are really good ones that we have to ensure that they're adjusted prior to completion of the contract.
I had a small comment about one of the items I don't know if it's something I should send directly to the subcommittee or discuss it here, or about a rewording. Okay, so it's item HA, which seems to ask them to put in a particular solution without quite saying what the problem is. So that this physical component is supposed to do something. I would reword it, I think, to say something like that they should ensure that access to the wireless network signal doesn't allow someone to access the device, because the physical component may ensure that, and even if it's there may be other ways to block it. So just state it in terms of the goal rather than the solution.
Can you tell me what you wanted to say? I'm going to do it right as you're talking.
Say that they should ensure that access to the wireless network signal does not allow access to the device itself. Does that make sense? I mean, that's what you're actually trying to ensure, right?
So I read this here as like there should be some sort of like a physical failsafe, some physical way to shut down.
Yeah, that's why I brought this up, is because you're right, Mahir, and you're right, Ike. I was actually thinking of like a guard or a shield, some type of something that would block signal physically. But Mahir's right, we want to make sure that the wireless access signal is an allowed device. But the reason why I put the required physical component on each device was because I was definitely thinking of some type of a mirror, a shield, or a piece of material that would be able to block a signal. So yeah, that's why I had that piece in B.
So does HB, as it's amended, address both of your concerns, Mihir and Tara?
No, because the physical component on each device is not the physical component, and and making sure that access to the wireless signal, but not just that it's not accessible, but that there's something preventing that access, like a fail safe. Not only
I think I got what you're saying, Tara.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone walks by the smart street light, they shouldn't be able to somehow scan or read the signal. There should be a physical thing blocking that.
Yeah, like when you're in jail, or you're under you're in jail, or you're under a building, or you're somewhere where
Right.
you can't
But
get
here is
signal.
just saying, okay, separate the signal from the device. Don't allow
Yes.
don't allow someone to access the device if they can access the signal, what's actually being read off of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if
Thank you.
have authentication on the signal, that's all you need. It'd be quite difficult to suggest that they somehow shield the signal.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need something specific to require, because saying that you have to shield the signal, like that requires a whole new request for a whole new contract, a whole new device concept. But I think there may be some ways to say disable physical access to the physical.
Require authentication on it or something, so that if you get on the network, you can't actually use that to get into the device.
I don't want you to even be able to get on the network wirelessly though. But I mean,
Say that again, Tara. It was difficult to hear.
oh, I was saying I wouldn't even want, I wouldn't even, excuse me, I wouldn't even want anybody to be able to get on the wireless network from the device. Because they're, you know, the device is restricted, right? There's a physical component that blocks signal. But I mean, write it how you want, but that was what I was thinking. Some type of physical component or material component to block any type of signals. And the only reason why I brought it up is because they have them in China on some of their devices. There are some devices that are physically impaired to not allow signal outside of the device. So
Just thinking of the feasibility. So if a third party is going to need to log into these devices to get the data, how is that not physically logging onto the device? You know,
well, they could do
maybe
it
they need
remotely.
to.
They can do that remotely. It wouldn't be walking up next to it to hack
Okay.
into it. 'Cause
Access the
everything
data
else is-
without accessing the device.
Right.
Let's reread the contract.
I'm going to leave it to the three technical folks to tell me what to type here. Ike, Tara, and Mayor.
So maybe split that into two different ones. We have B after itself, separate it into item C.
I don't think we should be telling them what solutions or technologies to deploy. We should be giving them goals and let them make the choices.
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing. We're just making suggestions, right? Recommendations. And if they don't feel like our money is good enough to implement physical material to prevent device signals, then that's on them. I just would love for it to just be in there, just to know that we've covered it. And so for me on 3, I would say, in addition, comma, as a fail safe, comma, it would be great to have some type of a physical material barrier to prevent any type of signal from being accessible on or around the device. And that's it. If they don't like it, they don't have to. But that's something I'm considering. It made me, when I was reading the article, I was like, oh, wait a minute. So they may not do it. I mean, they may not think it's important, but because they may not even understand it, but thank you.
The spirit of it, I understand. I'm just trying to figure out like, what are we actually voting on? Because I'm sure you could say the enclosure itself is a physical way to prevent people from accessing it. So if we are to give them a goal, as Mihir mentioned, versus trying to design it ourselves, if we're going to give them a goal, maybe it's just the way physical enclosures are treated. I totally see what you're saying.
I think what I said is good enough. And if they can't do it, they won't. In addition, no, I didn't say that. I said, in addition, as a fail safe.
How about after B, something like, for example, either through a physical material barrier or through authentication?
No, that's not, you already said that in B. I'm not talking about authentication. They can't even touch it to authenticate because there's no signal available. I'm not talking about authentication. I'm just getting access to a signal or a wireless. That's not what I'm saying. I said what I'd like for it to say. If you guys don't want it, just don't put it in there, but I know what I'm talking about.
So I think what Tora said, if the addition just says, in addition as a fail-safe, a physical material. So
I'm not talking about a grid or anything. I'm not talking about authentication. I'm just saying
Before we even
That
get
look
to
good?
authentication, because you said it in B, ensure access to the wireless signal, that's authentication. I'm talking about the same thing, just preventing it at a physical level with a physical material barrier. So, I mean, I'm saying it pretty clearly.
Yeah, well, does that look good? Do you want it modified further?
No, thank you. It does look good. Thank you, Ike.
Guess we should also talk about how we want to vote in these changes. Are we going to vote everything as one? Do we have any points we want to bring up before we do any voting so there are no surprises?
I think they're sufficiently different that we should vote on them separately per
Addition.
paragraph. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, First Amendment is to item 3A, and that is to add,
I'm so sorry. Before we do any voting, I did have a point. I think Nancy mentioned the EULA agreement. If it's possible, Captain Jordan, if there's is there any way to ensure, I guess, before we recommend it, because we're going to want, of course, any future changes to end user license agreements to be advantageous to San Diegans. Referring to specifically the EULA and the accountability to Flock and the EULA, do you foresee issues to us recommending sort of a strong response to any EULA agreement changes?
It's hard for me to speculate how they would respond to any recommended changes in regards to their EULA. Typically, the EULA is a standard, part of their contract. And I would leave that up to the attorneys involved, whether the city attorney's office as well as Flock. In addition to that, obviously, I've heard a lot of different recommendations that you're considering, with the feedback that we may be able to provide, hopefully provide some clarity before you move forward, but it's my turn.
Understanding, of course, there probably will be quite a bit of spotlights if any changes come through, because changes to the contracts that are required coming from the board again. So just so we're all aware, the nature of license agreements changing is a part of technology. So, okay. And then I think I had one further thing I wanted to ask. Do you feel, Captain Jordan, community concerns about the contract potentially, if there's anything where it competes with the use policy being stronger, do you feel that it gives sufficient powers to San Diegans and that the use policy is still has the teeth that the community at least would prefer? At least whenever the contract and use policy have ambiguity where it seems that contract might seem to be preferred.
I think that right now the contract and the compliance requirements and use policies fit well together. I would need any clarification on any specific points for you to address.
I think we have somebody's mic is on. Thank you, Captain.
Dr. Brown, I think okay, he raised his hand, I believe. Raise your hand.
I have a question. How much?
Do you mind turning on your camera as well, please?
I tried it. Can you? Was somebody allowed? Last time somebody released it for me to come, but it won't. Whoever is controlling it, they're controlling it from somewhere else. Because I click on it, it doesn't come on. So it's not me.
It says your video went out. I'm not sure when that happened.
Oh, let me see something in settings. I don't know. It's back audio. Let's go here. Video. Oh, there it is. There it is.
I think we can still talk about the amendment.
Okay, there it is. Good.
All right,
Good.
so far so good. Thanks, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to know, what role does the city attorney play in reviewing all of this? I mean, who's responsible for, I know we're doing it, but the final decision, does that go to the city attorney's office to review these contracts, to make sure this, how does that work? Does anyone know? Will we have to discuss this with the city attorney after this, or?
For recommendations, I mean, we can. Oh, sorry.
I'm just asking because.
I'm letting Captain Jordan answer.
I don't know if Dr. Brown's question really sparks a more holistic discussion about the city attorney's involvement. Really, they're involved right to the beginning. If you're negotiating a contract, one of the things they have to look at is whether or not it's applicable to the surveillance ordinance. And then obviously, as you go through this and you develop it, there's a very robust process involving many entities, sir, from the technology group, from that's Strategic Technology Alliance Committee, STAC, looking at it from technology group, they're looking at a purchasing contract, risk management looks at it. And throughout this entire process, all the way through, the city attorney's office is involved. They're constantly overlooking at, coordinating with the different groups, making sure that you're complying with it, but also making sure that you're complying with all of the city's requirements. And many of those are exhibits within this document, particularly our use policies or, contracting, subcontracting, whether meet and confer is needed with the respective associations related to contracts. Every step of the way, up and through development to finality. And I imagine if any of these recommendations today are pushed forward and suggested for inclusion by our city council, it could require the contract to be opened up and then amended to reflect those concerns. So there's really a process from start to finish with the city attorney's office are involved, sir.
Thank you.
Tora?
Tara, I noticed you had some things in the chat, but folks in the room can't see the chat. So if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, okay.
So we do have, we only have half an hour left in the room.
Oh,
So we have to
okay.
get to the next item after voting for this. So just want to make sure
I was-
everyone's aware.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I did find one of the components that they use in other countries' cameras. And so I just sort of wanted to bring that up. It's called a Faraday cage. And what it does is, or a Faraday shield, and maybe we can put in C, similar to a Faraday cage or Faraday shield. It's an enclosure that is used to block electromagnetic fields. And it can be, a Faraday shield can be formed by continuous covering of conductive material. So it helps with blocking, all types of anything with electronic equipment. A Faraday cage, I put it in the chat, but a Faraday cage is something that would help block, like people who are trying to get next to it to jam it, or a signal coming in or out of it and things like that. So maybe in C, we can say, in quote, in parentheses or in parentheses say, or comma, similar to a Faraday cage. Maybe that will make people understand what type of physical material I'm talking about. Something that blocks electromagnetic signals and fields from moving. And it just helps anything that's conducting any type of signal or anything, it actually blocks that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you. And I didn't realize that people couldn't see the chat. Sorry.
Anything else before we do the voting for the changes? Before we start voting, I wanted to confirm Chloe's members that are virtual can still vote on amendments that we recommend, right? Okay, great.
Okay, would you mind making the document the main thing on the Zoom, please? Thank you. Okay, so the first one we should talk about is section 3A. I've added the word perpetual licensing since there were some concerns around that. I've added including following termination of the contract because there were concerns around the vendor's ability to access and use city data for their own purposes, including after the contract has been terminated, and added this clarification sentence at the end that the vendor should not have the ability to access or use city data following termination. I mean, I make a motion to add that.
Second. For these changes, we're just going to do roll call. If do faster. If you want me to slow down, please let me know.
Caller.
Khaled Alexander,
Yes.
Mihir Bellari,
Yes.
Dr. Bob Brown, we'll come back.
You'll
Leader,
come back.
Dr. Bob Brown.
I still have a question. We already, should this, again, I'm asking, should we add something in here in this pursuant to the city attorney's review of this? They have the final say so because they are ultimately responsible for whatever contracts and what have you that we enter into. Should that be something
That
else?
wouldn't be a recommendation from us. That's just a standard process that the city follows.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Yeah, everything that goes through has to go through the city attorney.
Okay, okay. Well, then, well, yes, if that's the case, if the city attorney has the final say so, then I'll say yes.
Tori Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez. Yes. Mika Parsi. I vote yes. Passes unanimous. Next change.
Exchange, section 3G, there was a amendment to add and prosecutions based on race, ethnicity, and national origin as described in AB 2542.
And vote Khaled Alexander. Mihir Bellari, Bob Brown.
I can't hear what other people are saying.
So far, they were yes.
Yes.
Lee Duran,
Yes.
Tora Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez,
Yes.
Mika Parsi.
Yes.
I vote yes, unanimous. Next change.
Great. The next change is HA, amendment to add, the city does not have direct oversight of the ALPR vendor Flock. We recommend a direct contractual relationship with Flock in lieu of Flock's EULA.
This one just the extra question to Captain Jordan on the EULA and presumed changes forthcoming. Quick roll call. Khaled Alexander.
Yes.
Mihir Bellari,
Yes.
Bob Brown,
Yes.
E. Duran,
Yes.
Tora Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez,
Yes.
Mika Parsi.
Yes.
I vote yes. That one passes unanimously. On to the next item. Sorry, to the next change.
HB, adding or changing this to say, in addition to data encryption, the contract should ensure access to the wireless access signal, does not allow access to the device itself.
Khaled Alexander,
Yes.
Mihir Bellari, Bob Brown,
Yes.
E. Duran,
Yes.
Tora Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez,
Yes.
Mika Parsi.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That one passes unanimous. On to the last, is this the last? Okay. On to the next amendment.
Yes, this is the final one. New section HC. In addition, as a fail-safe, the contract should require a physical material barrier similar to a Faraday cage to prevent the signal from being accessible on or around the device.
Khaled Alexander,
Yes.
Mihir Bellari,
Yes.
Bob Brown,
Yes.
E. Duran,
Yes.
Tora Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez,
Yes.
Mika Parsi.
Yes.
I vote yes. That one also passes unanimously. Based on all the changes that have passed unanimously, we will go ahead and file a motion to pass the recommendations to the UBID contract as discussed, as voted. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All right, Kelly Alexander,
Yes.
Mihir Bellari, Dr. Bob Brown,
Yes.
Lee Duran,
Yes.
Tora Gentry Kelso,
Yes.
Sid Martinez,
Yes.
Vega Parsi,
Yes.
and I vote yes. The changes vote unanimously, and this motion passes unanimously with the understanding that this is all going to go through the city attorney. None of our recommendations should delay. We still have 25 minutes. Hopefully we can get through this quickly, but we have item 6, discussion. Notice there's no action on the agenda for this one. Discussion, it's the privacy ordinance. There's no supplementary material. However, I think there's useful to lay the groundwork here. Previous changes to the previous changes to the ordinance that were voted through include the grace period, and I know that's a contentious issue in the past. One of the things that, at least from a operational standpoint, that I and Pega have at least championed and would like the board to talk about ways to make this work without preventing really the teeth that protect civil liberties, right? And I will be the first person to say, okay, I just want to see evidence that anyone's plan for any changes will work, right? How do you envision this is going to play out meeting-wise, process-wise, contract-wise? We will be the ones receiving the brunt of a lot of this, having to do the proposal amending. So I think that's something to bring into consideration, and I encourage that open dialogue about, and really, really want to bring, want to make it clear that we have our own reasons to pursue this without really combating anyone else's agenda. I think there's a lot that we have in common with what other groups want. So let me just actually start speaking specifics. So I have a previous memo. We'll draft one up, I think, for next meeting, but some of the changes that I think would be interesting. Okay, let's move on from the grace period. Let's talk about requiring identification of the manufacturer anytime a proposal comes in front of us. Doesn't seem that crazy to ask for. Specifically, the language would be, this would be in the ordinance under the posting required of the city to the PAB. Also include manufacturer identification of the manufacturer for the particular surveillance technology. Very straightforward. I think there's other groups that may want more or less. I think the core being is that we need to know what's coming ahead of us. There's also, do we want to, there's a balance to be struck, right? Do we want to know everything, every fine detail before starting to talk about, before allowing the city to pursue technology? Or should we allow a certain amount of information to be collected and brought forward first before the PAB collaborates about technology, right? Do we want pretty much allow the process to go and not be held up, allow certain technologies to be, certain contracts to be sought? That way, when it comes in front of the PAB, we're not missing pieces of the picture. I think we saw this with smart streetlights, where the city actually couldn't provide things that we wanted per the ordinance. So these are just ways, let's brainstorm ways to remediate this so that it doesn't affect us in the future. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's one more change that I was interested in, but open for an open discussion here after the public comments.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And feel free to not go into detail in answering it. I still don't quite understand why we can't look at a contract until the contract's already in place. Like there's not, I don't understand that.
Why we can't look at it until it's in place? I'm just saying,
Well, before recommending or not recommending a technology, what prevents us now as is from doing it, being able to see it? Like, I've never understood that argument. I know the argument is made, but I haven't quite understood why.
the ordinance originally stipulated that the city had to come to the PAB before pursuing those things.
Before pursuing a contract.
Right. Or soliciting funds. I think the wording itself, I don't want to mince wording, but This is an area that I think we probably could take a finer look at and come to find something that we actually like. But having to come to the PAB first before doing any of those things, I think we saw in reality, even for technology that's less controversial than smart streetlights, I'm sure we'll see something like that come up again. Do we have any hands raised on the call? I think I meant to do public comments, so my apologies, people interested.
I would like to say something.
I
How,
think I asked for the
okay, go ahead.
for my points. So I also mentioned being allowed to seek solicit funds before coming to the PEB. And go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I want to take the 2020 memo from the city attorney regarding even before we became a committee addressing a lot of these issues. Are we still adhering, or is that still in play? Is that still under consideration? That letter, that memo that outlined some of the same things that we're going through right now, some of the same challenges before we got it, that talked about it's sort of like clearly stated what was in our purview as a committee. What we had do you all know what letter I'm talking about?
Yes, I just pulled it up on my computer. I do know what you're talking about, Dr. Brown.
Sorry, Bob, let me get back to you. I meant to issue public comments. Also get that question answered. We have 3 speaker slips: Seth Hall, Blair Beekman, and ratings. Seth, Blair, and Leanne. Oh, you're no longer speaking? Seth and Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman. I think it's Tara's microphone that keeps doing that. If maybe, okay, cool. Thank you.
No, it's not mine. I'm on mute.
Okay. Well, it's quiet.
We got
now.
it. Thank you.
Finally. Well, for whatever reason, it is quiet now. I guess for this item, just wanted to overall thank you for the work you're doing. For the previous item, you developed an organized system in how to talk about the item, and you've delivered it now. You'll be able to deliver it now to city attorneys. Thank you. And just thank you for your patience with myself in this month of October in better understanding the process myself. So it was a nice meeting for myself today. With this item and how you work on your issues, I hope, to me, some of the most important things about the future of this ordinance process is how we can consider the future of good community oversight and participation, and how that can be simply an important part in the future of the San Diego Tech Oversight Ordinance. There's ways I've been saying that you're trying to address amendment ideas and a process, and good luck in working towards compromise, and at the same time making clear the importance of ideals of openness and accountability, and that privacy does have there is a certain expectation of privacy that where we're coming from in working on these things, as the public streets do have their certain rights of that they are open space. There is also a certain expectation of privacy in this process, and we're trying to help define that. And so good luck in those efforts and what you're doing here. And that hopefully can be a guiding principle of responsible good practices for our future of tech and what you're working on right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Seth Hall.
Thank you. Speaking now for the Trust Coalition, we have authored a series of amendments that we've worked out with our, 30+ community groups to try to do a little bit of burden easing on the city, as well as accomplish some goals that I think everybody in the community can hopefully get behind. Just to summarize those real quick so that you all are aware of what's been proposed, and I'd love to send you all a copy of these, which you don't have yet, as far as I know, but we would love to provide them to you. It's really 3 areas for amendments that we were able to propose to the city. The first one was regarding the city needing more room to do its normal grant funding process. And we want to try to support the city as best we can, as long as we maintain those principles of transparency and responsible use. We proposed one solution there, and that solution should also, we're hoping, unlock the ability for the privacy board to be eligible to receive contracts. So that's kind of 2 things in one proposal that we're trying to offer up there. And the second one is a reformation of how the city goes about doing its community meetings. Right now, the city's community meetings process, as required by the ordinance, is extremely extensive, and we may be able to find a more streamlined way that encourages more participation for people who want to use virtual options. So those are some collaboration items that we're entering into and trying to get some attention on with the city. We'd love to involve the board with that. We'd love to have the support of the board if possible. And also we would love to support additional amendments the board comes up with, as long as they are, again, focused on maintaining those principles of transparency, responsible use. Thank you.
Do we have any comments online? I think you can't help but at least acknowledge that, look, we're doing something. Now we acknowledge that you gotta make it pragmatic. We've got to come together on something and really go through how it's going to play out. So let's hope we can at least keep our heads together on this. I just at least the past few weeks, it seems like the various groups seem to be, okay, let's get something that works. Fortunately, it takes kind of whatever it takes to get there, great. But ideally, we can at least acknowledge that there's a burning desire for wanting something that works. We've seen community meetings, attended community meetings that there were more police officers there than community members. And so we really can just, okay, how can we go about doing this better? Nothing specific, but I think I'm sensing a change in the pulse. So hopefully we can keep the momentum here. Khaled Ventura.
What is the process now when it comes to these amendments?
We have 2 full council meetings and 1 public safety committee meeting between now and our next meeting. I really expect the public safety committee that's where the discussion of amendment changes will come. That is the day before our next meeting. That public safety committee discussion. So could be wrong, could be right. It seems like that's the schedule for amendments going forward, at least being proposed. So we can at least from now come together, get things passed. now. So next meeting,
Their meeting is before our meeting where they're discussing them. And so that means whatever kind of amendments we want, I'm using we loosely here, conversations would have to be had with public safety before our next meeting. And so I'm assuming that would kind of fall on the chair and the vice chair to be having those conversations.
we have, yeah, we'll always want to talk to the city committee anytime anything involving anything in what we do happens. So yes, but also really, this is on the agenda because this is our time, right, to really come forward and see if we want to create something, advise on something, wait on something. We've heard committee members, we will likely hear very soon positions from the city, things that they would like in the ordinance. So kind of without that, it's hard to stress what we want in that, but we can at least, that's the road forward as I see a one PSC meeting before our next one.
But as a board, we won't be able to recommend specific amendments before they meet. However, after they come up with whatever they want to come up with, we may be able to make those amendments to the larger council.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure how the process will work with PSC, if that will be the only meeting they have, but that, it looks like that's their next. So, I mean, we can, if we feel that there's things that need to be in a memo, I think I'm open to at least passing language to get that in, even if the memo doesn't get written until closer to the PSC meeting. Does that make any sense? If you have strong concerns, things that we would like to have involved in memo, we can certainly act on that, even if we don't draft a full memo right now. But to your point, that looks like the schedule, so I'm not even sure if they can stick to that schedule. Or, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so are there conversations being had with the city and PAB around amendments?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, since the first iteration a few months ago.
We just won't be voting on any of those.
I mean, we have, I think the memo, the draft that was showing earlier showed, here's the things that we would like. We can vote to include those things, right? I'm just showing you what's currently being discussed. If you don't like that, just, hey, encourage something else. I think there's even something that, stipulates in our procedures. I think it has to do with if you vote something, I kind of have to act on that. So there's a lot of avenues if you feel like there's more to add to this, what we have up. But
I just want to make sure that you're able to do those and that we don't actually have to go through a formal process. But I don't want, because we don't have time to have no input in the amendments, and that you two actually have the ability to be like, this is an amendment that we see is important.
and then there's always, I don't think there's ever been an email I've received from a board member that, didn't take serious. So if there's anything that needs to be in offline, if you have a personal thing that you'd like to show up in the memo, that's something that I've always been open to, and at least just want to make sure the board gets, they're heard, even if we can't do it all, fit it all in the meeting. Tora?
I know we only have 7 minutes left, but I don't think I've ever seen the proposed amendments. And I don't think they've ever been disseminated. So if you and Pega have been speaking with council members about these amendments, we've got to have full transparency. We're going to be serving under, and like he said, like Khalid said, we're going to be held to the standard that the amendments are going to have. I've never seen these amendments. I know they've been proposed, but no one has formally shared them with me. So I feel like you guys should share those with us as members of this board who are susceptible to whatever changes are coming down. A summary like this on paper is not good.
We don't have any of those yet. We would.
So they
you
haven't
can-
shared with you guys either? That's,
What was that, Tora?
have they not shared with you as board leadership to disseminate with us?
No, we haven't seen any amendments yet.
Don't exist.
But I heard you
They're
say
they're
you're
still
gonna-
being, they're still in the
discussion.
idea phase, so we can't get a copy of something that doesn't exist yet.
Well, but if you're having these discussions, as our leaders, you should share those with us. And I'm not sure if we need to modify our bylaws so that we can have the dissemination of that type of, or some type of, you know, work group or whatever, so that the Brown Act is still being followed, but that's information that I feel like we should have. And that's number one. Number two, I don't know if you remember, but I proposed about maybe in the October 5th meeting that we create our own template. What I have seen, and I want to commend the departments who have done it with the police department and fire, is they have looked at the surveillance ordinance and they have fashioned their own template in response to address every point on the ordinance that their technology falls under. And I think as a board, we need to go ahead and come up with a standardization, some type of a required checklist or form to say what we are requiring as a board before we can start considering. These top three are important. Who's the manufacturer? What type of funds are going to be some, you know, and that's a great start. So I feel like we need to start moving towards standardization of what our expectations are as a board as well, and set the tone. That's my comment. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with you, Tara, that we should have our, standardized way of doing our business. We should have standardized forms. I don't think that would be an ordinance amendment issue. I think that's a bylaws and a thing for the board to address. The other, the first thing that you were talking about, we have, both Ike and I have pushed the city to let us know as soon as they have some amendments, as soon as the ideations come about, as soon as anything starts floating around, both from the mayor's office as well as city council. And we've been told that there isn't anything to share with us at the moment, but we are still working with them and meeting with Chloe and Chida on a regular basis to get at least you know, our fingers on the pulse of what the mayor at least is going to recommend as an amendment, even if we haven't seen the actual verbiage of such an amendment.
And to close you guys out for process clarification, the city attorney cannot bring forward an ordinance without direction being given to the city attorney's office by committee. So there won't be any amendments to present at committee. You can come up, you can have discussion and talk about ideas and what you're hoping to do, but the city council has to give that direction. So nobody's missing anything, and the mayor's office and the city in general have committed to you all that when there's something to see and to talk about, we will absolutely do that. So I think you guys are.
I think that's an artifact from the body worn cameras. We just, once we get past PSC, it looks, some things, it seems like it's harder to get in front of, but this is definitely one of those things where we're pushing for getting any ordinance amendments as soon as we can. And the city so far has worked with us. No issues
you.
because anything happening. So
Thank you, guys.
in this
I
meeting, we have
appreciate
the dialogue so far. Bob, I think you have a question.
I actually, no, well, no, I think I've heard it all. As long as we, you know, I just again want to reemphasize that, and I know you've all have heard it a million times. I'm grateful for the work that we're doing, but I just don't want it to impede the safety of our citizens. So we can find a way to work around that, to work through it as a group the best we can. But I just safety to me is critical. So I just like to reemphasize that.
The final recommendation you all have is a budget ask. I strongly recommend you put forward a memo during budget season to each council member, because unfortunately that's not something they can do in the ordinance.
That's right. That's right. That's why I put it under additional other recommendations that we're proposing to the city and to the city council. It's not an ordinance change. Mhm.
I was actually waiting until next meeting to bring that last recommendation up, but per the ordinance, I think the first three at least. The last one is, we see the road forward. It'd be nice to. Okay.
Just a procedural question. Is our action on the 300 plus prioritizing is our action?
It's right now. We give it to the city, and the city, you know, they can come back and say, well, this isn't going to be useful. They can immediately come back with technology for us. We should always be ready to take up technology if it gets, once the process is ready for that. But right now, the board doesn't have an action on that.
So they'll come back and say, here's the items we want you to work on next.
That's a chair action, getting that to the city.
Thank you.
And to Bob's point, yeah, always I think we're protecting San Diegans kind of hand-in-hand policy for safety. I do want to at least shout out the Public Safety Committee for that is their bread and butter, that is their job to always address everything from a public safety standpoint. So the work that they do is very tireless, so props to them. All right, let's get out of here. Last item, motion to adjourn. All opposed or all approve? Okay, all opposed.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.